Every major economy on Earth is in debt. The United States owes more than $38 trillion. The European Union, around $14 trillion. Japan, close to $9 trillion. Even countries with trade surpluses or vast natural resources carry large public debts. Here's the question that doesn't fit common sense. If almost every country owes money, who is on the other side of the ledger? This isn't a slogan or a trick. It's the starting point for understanding how the modern financial system actually works. Because today, public debt is not a temporary problem or a sign of failure. It's the core infrastructure of the global economy. Every war financed, every crisis managed, every recovery engineered. All of it rests on layers of IOUs. And when you follow those IOUs far enough, the answer is unsettling. The world, in aggregate, owes money to itself, but the benefits and burdens of that system are not shared equally. To understand how we reached a world carrying more than $315 trillion in total debt, almost 3 times the size of the global economy, you have to go back to the moment when national debt itself was invented. It didn't begin on Wall Street. It began on a battlefield. In 1694, England was locked in a costly war against France and running out of gold. Desperate for funds, the Crown offered merchants a new deal: lend money today in exchange for a guaranteed stream of future interest, backed by taxes. To manage this agreement, England created a new institution, the Bank of England. For the first time, a government could spend money it didn't yet possess, and lenders received something revolutionary in return: a tradable promise backed by the state. This was the birth of the government bond, the blueprint every major nation would eventually imitate. France adopted it, the Netherlands perfected it, the young United States relied on it to finance independence and westward expansion. National borrowing stopped being a sign of weakness. It became a measure of power. Empires once extracted gold through conquest. Now they extracted interest through credit. The battlefield shifted from territory to the balance sheet. Fast forward 3 centuries, and that small wartime invention has become the backbone of the global economy. Debt is now the world's most profitable export. The United States carries over $38 trillion. Japan sits above $9 trillion. And worldwide borrowing grows by the equivalent of $1 trillion every 100 days. Every nation borrows. Every bank lends. Every citizen, through taxes, pensions, and savings, is woven into the same web. So who holds the other end of the thread? Start with the United States, because its debt isn't merely national, it's global infrastructure. Of the $38 trillion total, almost half is publicly held, meaning owed to investors rather than to government agencies. And roughly 2/3 of those investors are American: pension funds, insurance companies, mutual funds, banks, and, crucially, the Federal Reserve itself. The remaining third, around $9 trillion, is foreign-owned. Japan is the single largest holder at roughly $1 trillion. China comes next with about $800 billion, then the UK, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So the idea that America is in debt to China is technically true, but only for about 2% of the total. Most of the money America owes is owed to America. Treasury issues the bonds. Banks and funds buy them. The Federal Reserve purchases them again, creating new dollars. Taxes pay the interest, which flows right back into American retirement accounts. A closed loop, a financial mirror reflecting itself. And as we'll see next, this circularity isn't an American exception, it's the model for the entire planet. And what looks like an American loop is really just one strand in a global web. Japan buys U.S. treasuries. The U.S. funds Europe through the IMF. Europe finances developing economies through the World Bank. Developing economies send their surplus dollars right back into Western bonds as reserves. It's a worldwide relay race where every country hands off the same baton, an IOU backed by another IOU, a planetary circle of borrowed promises. Think of it like a poker table where no player uses their own chips. Everyone is playing with credit borrowed from someone else, and the only way the game continues is if nobody gets up and asks for the money back. But that's only the visible layer. Behind every government bond sits a deeper power structure: hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, pension giants, and central banks managing tens of trillions. They decide which nations borrow cheaply and which must pay a premium just to stay alive. When they lose confidence, currencies collapse, governments fall, entire economies can be rewritten overnight. Democracy chooses leaders, markets choose survivors, and at the top of this hierarchy sits the modern high priest of credit, the central bank. Because central banks don't just influence debt, they create it. When the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank buys government bonds, they generate new money in exchange, turning a liability on one balance sheet into an asset on another. Every dollar in your pocket, every euro, every yen is part of this chain, a unit of debt wearing the disguise of currency. For decades, this machine functioned on a single ingredient: confidence. As long as investors believed governments would keep paying interest, even if the principal was never touched, the system stayed upright. But when confidence cracks, the polished architecture of global finance reveals the steel beams holding it up. We've seen this before. In Greece, 2010, the government's debt snowballed beyond what the economy could sustain. Bond Bondholders panicked. Yields shot upward. The European Central Bank and the IMF stepped in, but their rescue came packaged with austerity, tax hikes, slashed services, unemployment that scarred an entire generation. Bailout became another word for sacrifice. In Argentina, repeated defaults turned debt into a national recurring nightmare. Every few years, the currency implodes, savings evaporate, and citizens start again from zero. In Sri Lanka, when the government ran out of foreign currency, fuel vanished, lights went out, industries froze, and political collapse followed almost immediately. When the debt engine stalls, the creditors step out of the shadows, anonymous bondholders, rating agencies, and global institutions who suddenly control what a nation can buy, tax, cut, or sell. But here's the twist. After every collapse, the same cycle restarts. New loans replace old ones. Old debts get restructured. The machine hums again with a new date on the same bill, because in the modern economy, debt isn't meant to be repaid, it's meant to be rolled. Governments today don't treat debt the way households do. When you borrow, you're expected to pay the principal. When a nation borrows, repayment isn't the plan. Renewal is debt becomes a subscription, a rolling contract. Old bonds mature, new ones take their place, and the cycle continues without ever hitting zero interest. Not repayment is the real product. The global economy relies on that stream of interest the way a circulatory system relies on blood flow. Cut it off, and the entire structure flatlines. That's why the United States will never pay down its $38 trillion. It will refinance it forever. Japan has done the same for decades, with debt soaring above 250% of GDP. Yet its borrowing costs remain near zero. Because investors aren't waiting for the day they get their money back, they're waiting for the day they roll it over again. For them, government debt isn't a liability. It's the safest asset on earth. A U.S. Treasury bond anchors pension funds, backs bank reserves, stabilizes central banks. It is the foundation. Now imagine Washington suddenly tried to eliminate all its debt. Trillions of those safe assets would vanish from global markets. Banks and funds would lose their most reliable collateral. Dollars would evaporate from circulation, triggering deflation and a global chokehold of credit. Ironically, paying off the debt would collapse the very system that treats that debt as money. So governments do the opposite. They keep issuing more, not recklessly, but rhythmically. Like a heartbeat you don't notice until it stops. The goal isn't to eliminate debt. The goal is to keep the world believing it's manageable. Because once belief falters, interest rates spike, confidence dies, and the machine built on rolling promises grinds to a halt. But saying we owe it to ourselves hides a deeper tension. Because the benefits of the system don't flow evenly, and the costs don't fall evenly either. Interest payments don't drift through society like rain. They move upward, from taxpayers, workers, and consumers to the institutions that hold the debt: funds, banks, insurers, sovereign portfolios. Debt isn't just a relationship between countries. It's a relationship between classes. That's why global inequality and global indebtedness rise in lockstep. The system rewards those who hold credit and drains those who only service it. The pattern scales perfectly, from a family taking out a mortgage, to a nation issuing bonds, to an entire planet rolling trillions forward every quarter. Creditors aren't villains. Debtors aren't victims. They're two gears in the same engine, but every engine can stall. And when new borrowing can't keep pace with the promises made years earlier, the question, who is the creditor, stops being academic and becomes personal. Because at the top of this global pyramid, there isn't one face you can point to. Not China, not Wall Street, not the IMF. It's all of them, and it's us. The modern financial system has blurred the line completely. Governments issue debt, banks multiply it, markets trade it, and citizens depend on it. Debt isn't just part of the global economy. Debt is the global economy. And if confidence ever breaks, we'll remember what debt actually represents: a promise that cannot survive forever. Debt once meant chains. Today, it means balance, an equilibrium held together not by repayment, but by the belief that repayment is possible. And that's the fragile secret the modern world is built on: trust. Not gold, not productivity, not balanced budgets, just trust in a promise that can't be fulfilled but must never be questioned. We owe it to ourselves, yes, but the benefits pool at the top and the burdens spread across everyone else. Workers fund interest through taxes. Pensioners depend on systems tied to the same debt. Consumers hold currencies backed by obligations that were never meant to be settled. It's a loop that works until the moment it doesn't. Because if confidence cracks, if the illusion falters even for a day, the numbers stop being numbers and start becoming consequences. Markets seize, rates jump, currencies swing, and the smooth surface of modern finance reveals the truth underneath. Every bond is a promise. Every dollar is a liability. Every economic boom is built on borrowed time. And if this changed how you think about debt, subscribe. History doesn't repeat perfectly, but it rhymes loudly, and I'll show you where to listen.